Hello guys, welcome back to Dharma Geosphere. Uh, Today I'll be interacting with you on two of the greatest geographers of the modern era. Father of modern geography was Alexander von Humboldt, and his associate was Karl Ritter. So I will talk to you all about them together. Alexander von Humboldt was father of modern science, wherein he believed that the modern science was an integrated science which included the aspects of knowledge related to moral and material, living and non-living, and organic and inorganic. He propounded a concept of jus man hang, which basically means hanging together. He meant hanging together of various fields of science, geology, plant geography, botany, zoology, and he was one of the first to also introduce ecology as a separate branch of science, and also the biodiversity. He was a great scholar, a great scientist, he was a researcher, he was also a traveler, so he gathered a lot of information and understood various branches of science and integrated them together as the universal science. The Karl Ritter, before I go to Karl Ritter, let us not forget, generally this point or contribution of Alexander von Humboldt is forgotten, that he was the pioneer and one of the first and foremost to map areas of similar temperature and pressure, a technique which is even used today for giving the average weather and climate conditions. As you see in the news, at the end of the news, the weather conditions are given. It is the same technique which is adopted today, which was given way back by Alexander von Humboldt. So coming to Karl Ritter, he was one of the pioneers of the regional approaches to geography, but before that he also, along with Humboldt on similar lines, propounded the concept of the scientific geography, what he called as Erdkunde. That's how it is given, but it is pronounced in German as Erdkunde. So that is nothing but earth science, which encompasses all the physical and human geographical aspects. He also believed that, like how body is for the soul, similarly the physical globe is for the mankind, or the human kind, which is again part of the great man-environment relationship or the scenario. He was the pioneer of the regional geography approach, and he firmly believed that each region has different characteristics. He thought that sunshine was represented by Asia, because the first man civilizations originated in Asia. He thought of Africa as noon, that is because he thought that the relief features were all flat and uniform, climatic conditions existed there, so they led a kind of attitude of slumber. And for sunset, for him was a special place that is in and around Europe, where the major accomplishments of mankind had occurred. And then he also said the post sunset, or new sunset was the term given to him for the newly discovered America. So, in spite of the fact that both Humboldt and Ritter had very similar views as far as the relationship of man and environment is concerned, or geography being part systematic and part regional, and man being the integral part of nature and environment. Unfortunately, the geographers who followed them and the scholars who followed the this time period somehow felt that because the regional geography dealt with the spatial patterns of humans living in a particular group or domains of the Earth's surface, and the systematic geography involved the patterns of the physical phenomena, or what is seen as in nature, more like the physical geography. They had this misconception that probably Karl Ritter and Humboldt differed, and they were conflicting views, and they were two divisions of systematic geography as a physical geography and regional geography as a particular geography of human beings being dealt in that particular region. But the truth is that there were no conflicting views, though their style was different. Basically, whether it was the systematic geography or the regional geography that was being dealt by both of them simultaneously was in fact complementary to each other, while the regional geography was dealing with the spatial patterns of humans living in a particular region. The systematic geography dealt with the physical phenomena spread all over the globe. So this misconception that they had conflicting views is not the correct one, and in fact they had much more common. They basically both propounded the universalization of science and geography as one integrated science, and they were both propounders and laid the foundations of modern geography as we learn today. So in spite of their commonality and complementarity of their approaches and perspectives towards geography, there was one underlying difference with reference to the legacies. The followers, if at all they had, they were slightly different. Unfortunately, for Humboldt, it was not that there were any school left or any disciples, band of disciples following him, in spite of the fact that he had some very unique way of doing his research by putting in the questions and answering them specifically on various topics. On this field of inquiry which he adopted was so unique, and he has so eloquently expressed his questions and answers, particularly with reference to understanding the air temperatures and pressures over a region which change with altitude. And also during his voyage to North America, he brought in this concept of differences in the climate and the vegetation types through a kind of a question and answer methodology. This methodology, unfortunately, could not be picked up by the later geographers who followed for reinventing this geography using that methodology, and Humboldt was left with no followers or no school of thought. All that he taught so eloquently and so brilliantly using this empirical method and the question answer technology which he adopted at that time, unfortunately remained during his time with him only and was not carried forward. In contrast to that, Ritter had quite a few followers who in fact took his ideas much further, much improved, and then they organized the regional geography in such a way that it remained there for a very long time entirely based on Ritter's ideas. So two of the important followers and students of Karl Ritter, when Karl Ritter was holding the chair of the professorship of geography in Germany, perhaps the only single chair that was being held during that time. We had Reclus on one side and you had Biot on the other side. While Reclus took forward his concept of Erdkunde and finished the places and domains which was left by Ritter, and then he completed that book. No, he not only completed, he brought in one of the foremost and complete books of the various aspects of geography in the regional perspective, minus those erratic passages earlier given by Ritter. So this is a complete book about the geography, the new geography which he had brought in. So please do not forget to quote Reclus when you are answering any question related to the regional geography. Similarly, Biot also got in the concept of new geography. He started teaching by newer methods, substituting the earlier rote or memorizing methods of unrelated aspects of geography. So during his lectures in New Jersey and other parts of America about the regional geography of America and all that, he was invited by the universities of America, and he was firmly established for developing all the Ritter's ideas of regional geography, and he continued that for a very long time and ensured that the regional geography as a separate discipline, as a separate division of geography flourished. So this is perhaps one of the reasons that in spite of Alexander van Humboldt having a much bigger stature and a much larger influence and a huge impact of his concepts during his time, his ideas were not carried on further, and we see a lot of and the future geographers adopted the regional approach much more than the systematic approach. So this is how you should analyze when there is any question related to Karl Ritter or van Humboldt, why regional geography spread after Ritter and Humboldt, and why the systematic geography remained within the four walls during the Humboldt time only. So I will show you a small video clip on Humboldt, and then we will see what are the contributions of Humboldt and Karl Ritter.
I would like to introduce you to one of the most amazing scientists who have ever lived, so famous that more places on Earth have been named after him than any human being, so famous that President Thomas Jefferson said he was the most important scientist he ever met, and Simon Bolivar called him the true discoverer of South America. On the 100th anniversary of his birth, every story on the front page of the New York Times was written about him. Who is this scientist, and what did he do that was so extraordinary? His name is Alexander von Humboldt. Never heard of him? Most people haven't. His name has been lost in history. But here is what he did. Alexander von Humboldt started as a practicing geologist, but when an inheritance allowed him the freedom to travel, he began an incredible 5-year scientific journey through South America, Mexico, and Cuba. From 1799 to 1804, von Humboldt and his botanist partner, Aimé Bonpland, traveled through the jungles of Venezuela, made detailed drawings of Inca ruins while exploring the mountains of Peru, and traversed the breadth of Mexico and Cuba. He explored the length of the Orinoco River in Venezuela. This 1,700-mile portion of the trip was filled with danger, disease, and fantastic new discoveries. For example, von Humboldt was the first explorer to witness the preparation of the curare plant for poison arrows. He recognized the importance of the cinchona tree, whose bark contains quinine, which is a malarial cure, and discovered the ocean current which limits rainfall on the coast of Peru, later named the Humboldt Current. He discovered and described many new species of plants and animals, including the electric eel. In Ecuador, he climbed one of the highest volcanoes, Chimborazo, so that he could record air pressure, something no one had ever done at this altitude. The entire journey covered over 24,000 miles, the same distance as the circumference of the Earth. Along the way, he took measurements about the shape of the land, its temperature, the air pressure, and the strength of magnetic fields. By connecting places of identical temperatures, he created contour maps with lines of similar temperatures, which he called isotherms. Because Humboldt invented these maps, scientists began to see patterns in the life and the types of life present in certain places, and he became a pioneer in the visual presentation of scientific data. These discoveries and measurements were critical to what made him such an important scientist. Until Humboldt, scientists who described new plants and animals did not clearly see the crucial connection between living things and the places in which they lived, called habitats. They did not appreciate the role of the environment on the diversity of life. Humboldt discovered and understood the importance of these connections. Because of this, he is considered the founder of biogeography. He also developed a theory called the unity of nature, which shows the interconnectedness of all nature. This knowledge plays a vital role in the preservation and protection of our habitat. His book, Cosmos, describes this theory and is still in print today. As celebrated a scientist as he was, von Humboldt was also generous, thus serving another role in the world. He was the mentor and teacher to younger scientists. In fact, just recently it was discovered the crucial role that Humboldt played in the work of his most famous pen pal, Charles Darwin. A young Darwin read Humboldt extensively and wrote in his diary while on the Beagle, "I am at present fit only to read Humboldt. He, like another sun, illuminates everything I behold." Today, although Humboldt is known and revered by a small community of scientists, he is almost totally forgotten by many of us. Alexander von Humboldt's influence is apparent everywhere and in every scientific discipline. He is, perhaps, the most important forgotten man of science. But he doesn't have to be, because if you remember him, perhaps his influence will be celebrated.
Hope you had a bird's eye view of Humboldt's life and his contribution in that small video clip. We'll see a few more slides on the contribution of Humboldt and Rita. So this is the most handsome Humboldt you can see. You can see the entire Earth surface, the plant life, the zoology, the animal life, and the plant Earth and plant geography, etc. This is the timeline I've just captured of what happened during his life, just for sake of quick revision. And this is the main contributions, if you have to just remember in bullet points. First is the variation in temperatures at same latitude in accordance with the distance from the ocean or the sea. Then the permafrost, that is the permanent frost on the Arctic regions and various mountains, and then his work in economic geography, and then in the field study of America, where he related climatic zones with the various vegetations, and then establishment of correct latitudes and longitudes of a particular place, and the relationship between the temperature, altitude, vegetation, and agriculture. So, as I already said, he first sailed to South America along with all the possible scientific instruments of those times, and he was able to explore the nature. Then he eventually visited the Canary Islands, Venezuela, Ecuador, and even up to United States. He collected a lot of botanical, zoological, ethnological specimens and studied them with respect to the variations in temperature and pressure and climate zones and vegetation types in the tropical lands. And then you all know that he was astonished to see the cold current near Peru, and so a current has been named after him after he widely studied why the ocean current is a cold ocean current that flows along most of the western coast of South America. He was also the first person to help and preserve the medicinal plant cinchona, because it was over-harvested at that time, and he realized that any over-harvesting could affect the the soil nutrition as well as the plant characteristics. So this was the cold Humboldt current of the coast of Peru. You can see it here. And then he also discovered and mapped the Cassiquiare Canal, the only natural canal that connects to major rivers. And he also studied how electricity can be produced and is credited for discovering the first electricity generation through the electric eel. And then the Chimborazo mountain he climbed. You can see this picture with the background of the mountain. Then he traveled along the Ural Mountains at the age of 60, and that is when he wrote the famous book of Cosmos, and then later he died at the age of 90. At that time he was not able to finish Cosmos, but then after his death also he was remembered. There were a lot of things which were named after him. You name anything, a current, a river, a mountain, a range, a reservoir, even the salt marshes, not to speak of parks and towns, they were all named after Humboldt. There may be a short question like what is the Humboldtian science? So it is nothing but an approach to science which was needed that could account for the harmony of nature among the diversity of the physical world. Botany, zoology, geology, anthropogeography, ecology, and biodiversity, etc. So this is the unity of nature wherein he clearly depicted there is interrelationship, there is an interdependence of each other. I've already highlighted this in the overview on Humboldt and Ritter. So this is nothing but the Humboldtian science. This is the work of Cosmos. You see the thick book, which was later on completed. Coming to Karl Ritter, this slide captures the entire work of his. Most famous is the 19-volume Die Erdkunde or Die Erdkunde, as is pronounced in Germany. This is nothing but an encyclopedia of earth science, wherein he brings out what he believed that geography features of a place are affected by the history of its inhabitants, similar to what Humboldt said. Probably the style of telling or the style of narration was different, but basically what they said was man and environment, they exist together, they are dependent on each other, they are interdependent on each other. And his first geographical writings were in Europe. He also founded the Berlin Geographical Society, and he was also the first chair of a professor of geography in Germany, and that is how he also had his own school of thought, and we had a band of disciples and scholars who worked with him. So the Ritter range, which you can see in California even till today, it's a very famous range, is named after Karl Ritter. So if you have to take 5 bullet points of important contributions of Karl Ritter, you can say unity in diversity. He used the regional approach rather than the systematic studies. He identified races by skin color and color by continent, and also, as I told, he was able to relate the attitude of people based on the climate zones in which they live. And then he also gave the God's plan, teleological plan, where in many of his books you find a few paragraphs written in and around that, which later Reclus removed, and then he made a very authentic regional geography. And of course regional geography, and then his textbook on geography of Europe is still considered to be one of the very good reference books. So this is about Karl Ritter, most of which I have already said. So Ritter had this vision of a very ordered and harmonious universe
including bringing in the approach of theological. So as a teacher, he was very clear, and he emphasized how God's plan was revealed in the harmony of man and nature. And then his father was a physician. He also became a doctor, but he suddenly moved on to geography, and he took a lot of interest in geography. As I said, he founded the Berlin Geographical Society, and then his class lectures particularly point to geography that is not just a dry gazetteer of names and places, but it is a subject of great importance which deals with the man and nature interrelationship, and be overemphasized and very clearly brought in the unity that can be seen in the various diverse environmental scenarios. And of course, Earth Kunda, I've already said that he declared geography to be the earth science, which later on now we realize that the geography is basically more of an earth science, which includes not only just the physical geography, but also including the ocean geography, meteorology, etc. And then, of course, is theological nature, strong belief in God, the relations. We believe that phenomena of all forms of nature to the human race. He makes the rhetorical claim that geography as a science of earth science is far beyond the real objectives, namely the description of the earth as the home of man. Then this is the 2 volumes of Earth Kunda, and then this is the major geographical concepts of Ritter, which can be summarized that Ritter conceived geography as an empirical science rather than one which is based on deduction from rational principles or a priority theory. That there is a coherence in the spatial arrangement of terrestrial phenomena. It could be part of God's design, or could also be part of the way human handled the environment without disturbing it. And then the boundary line, whether it is wet or dry, as an instrument for understanding the real purpose of geography, which is the understanding the content of area, that is the content of a region, that is the content of a place. And according to him, geography was concerned with objects on the earth as they exist today in an area, and he studied those areas systematically. So basically, the regional approach of Karl Ritter was also systematically. It is just that instead of studying all the areas together the way Humboldt had described, he said it is better to study the areas one after the other, so that there can be a kind of a comparison of various regions. This is nothing but a regional approach of studying systematic geography. So that is all in this video. Please study Humboldt and Ritter thoroughly, even if they may not be questions related directly to them. Their works are very important, their concepts are very important, and what they had said today, that time has stood the test of time today. That as we see, is all the entire geography is nothing but interrelated and interdependent with the other disciplines as well. So that's all from Humboldt and Karl Ritter. We have contributions of geographers from China and also India. Not many books have covered that, but we will do it. Because in my mentorship, I do not leave anything for luck or for guessing and all that. You should do all the topics, all the chapters. It just takes about another hour or two to cover. So it doesn't matter at all. So the more you cover the entire perspectives in human geography, the more confident and the more hands-on and having the entire domain of perspectives in human geography in your grips. So guys, we'll catch up on my next video where I'll interact with you on the contributions made by the Chinese geographers. Okay guys, then see you all. Bye. Have a nice day and a nice week ahead, and keep focusing. This is the time when others are probably a little laid back because of the uncertainty of the outcome of the prelims exam. But you guys stay tuned, stay focused, and before the result of the prelims comes, finish off at least the human geography. That should be in your pocket, and then we will go even much stronger as we touch upon the other topics of physical geography and the other domains. Okay guys, see you all and bye.